The recent diplomatic expulsions that have happened tit for tat between the U.S. and Russia, and really Russia and many other Western countries, has created an environment of increased tensions. And we want to talk a little bit today about what those tensions mean for ordinary people. So Fred, as we've talked about for many years and really written about for many years, we've been watching this increase in tensions between Russia and the West, and it really kicked into gear after Vladimir Putin ascended to the presidency in 2000. You know, Putin was a former KGB officer, former director of the FSB, their domestic service. So when he became president, we really saw them become more aggressive. What kind of things have we seen them do during that time?
Well, as you and I have chatted and written about a lot, Scott, as you know, the Cold War probably never ended. And I think when you look at what the Russians are up to, as evidenced by what appears to be the targeted assassination of the defector in London, Skripal, there's a long litany of body bags of the Russians going after defectors and targeting enemies of the state, which you so aptly wrote about as a signal to resonate to those individuals that are either on the fence thinking about it or perhaps are reporting to whether it be MI6 or the CIA. So the Russians, I don't think I've seen anything like it in my time period. I'd love to know what you think over just their targeted killings.
Well, I think that one of the things that we've seen is for several years now, they've literally gotten away with murder.
Yes.
And that has really emboldened them to become more and more aggressive because they were getting away with it. There was no blowback, and really the benefits outweighed the perceived cost or no cost. It really seems like the Skripal case has put kind of changed that, and the dynamic is changing because of the blowback now. And we've seen the UK kick out a number of diplomats. The U.S. has kicked out 60, and a whole host of other countries have done that. And then we've seen Russia, of course, reply in a reciprocal manner. And of course, this is going to have an impact on the intelligence services, correct?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you look at just the U.S. closing the Russian consulate in Seattle, for example. So what happens to all those FBI agents that were assigned to keep tabs and surveil those Russians and the surveillance teams and so forth? And then our old outfit with the Russians forcing the American consulate in St. Petersburg to shut down. Everybody has to go back and get new assignments and so forth. So behind the scenes, to me, the interesting aspect is I think this is just going to drive the Russian SVR, the Russian FSB into more of a non-official cover, more into the illegals like the Americans, where you're going to have individuals that are going to be flying under the radar and different commercial cover. Look, the Russians aren't going to stop spying. That's one thing that's for sure. It's just they're just going to do a course correction and drive underground with a lot of their espionage-related activity.
And of course, the Americans and Western intelligence officers are going to have to do the same thing because they've got these spies in place. And quite honestly, in a lot of times, there's a lot of care and feeding there. Obviously, they're going to try to work more towards covert communications. To do it remotely, but there's still a lot of hand-holding, and some things you just can't do remotely. So somebody's going to have to come in and have that face-to-face meetings with these agents that they have in place, plus recruit new agents. It's very difficult to recruit new agents remotely.
Absolutely, and then if you look at just the trade craft that takes place when you have to do those kinds of meetings and so forth, it affords the intelligence services of not only Russia, but the United States and Five Eyes to adjust and to try to map and track who the new intelligence officers are going to be. And which I think brings us to another conversation point is how does this affect businesses?
Exactly. And that's one of the concerns that we're talking about as the Russians are increasing their dragnet, and they're going to have more CI, counterintelligence assets, as well as the FBI, in the U.S. Both sides are going to be looking for these illegals, for these non-official cover officers, and trying to arrest them basically. So we're going to probably see some high-profile spy swap type drama. But in the meantime, ordinary travelers, business travelers, are going to come under a lot of scrutiny. And it doesn't have to just be American passport holders or Russian passport holders. As we've seen in past cases, you referenced the illegals case here in 2010, that the Anna Chapman case.
Right.
In that case, none of those illegals were traveling under Russian passports.
Canadian passports.
There were
right?
4 of them on Canadian passports. 4 of them claimed to be American citizens. 2 claimed to be Peruvians. And then, of course, Anna Chapman actually had legitimate British citizenship. So, the dragnet has to be wider than just looking for people on Russian passports or U.S. passports. And so both sides are going to be really placing people under a microscope and looking for those potential spies in their country. And that's going to really place people under pressure. And of course, there's a little more protection for people coming into the U.S. Due to kind of the human rights angle and stuff. But for people going into Russia, whether it's Americans or other Westerners, they can really be placed in some hot water, correct?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think the fear would be is if you are that business traveler that's going into Moscow for legitimate business, the Russians are going to be taking a hard look at you to see, are you in fact that copier salesperson, or are you perhaps working for a intelligence agency of some sort, and you've come into Russia to carry out clandestine related activity. So I think the scrutiny now at this period of time is going to be intense by the Russians primarily, to include travelers going in, I think, for the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, we were talking about that in our forecast last year for this year, that one of the things we were expecting to see was, very, heavy surveillance on, international and specifically American companies who were sponsors of the World Cup, their employees, their IT infrastructure, everything else going in there. And this has just really now placed it on steroids. And so it's going to be even more of a challenge for those security directors, for those corporate travelers. And they need to be very careful, not only as far as their personal security and the fact that you could actually be beaten perhaps by nationalists, but you really have to worry about your intellectual property, what you take with you electronically, because it's very likely to be searched or copied. And of course, also travelers need to understand, travelers to Russia, especially Westerners, and the more high profile, the worse. You're likely to be placed under not only audio surveillance, but video surveillance. So basically everything you're doing in your hotel room is going to be recorded.
And I think on a very granular level, Scott, that British and American travelers and British and American business people are going to be looked at with that fine-tooth comb, just to make sure that you're not coming into Mother Russia to carry out clandestine-related activities, or to service a dead drop, or to meet a Russian potential spy. So this is, I think, going to get worse before it's going to get better.
Absolutely.
For more information on this topic, please visit our website at stratfor.com, and be sure to take a look at our new product called ThreatLens. I think you'll like it.